Hello all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are seeing this session. Whether you are a developer or an IT administrator, today we are going to show you some fascinating new monitoring capabilities in Azure that is going to help you increase IT efficiency in your organizations. I am Rahul Bagaria, a senior product manager in Azure Monitor, and I will have with me Coyote Prince later on in the session. If you're new to this space, you're going to learn some common monitoring scenarios that you can take advantage of Azure Monitor for. We are going to show you some new and recent Azure Monitor capabilities and share some resources that you can start checking out immediately after this session. Now, whether you manage applications or infrastructure, either in Azure or in a hybrid environment, there would be various common scenarios where monitoring applies very frequently. Let's look at some of them. Now, when you want to detect issues in your applications, whether it could be failures or performance problems, Application Insights is a feature of Azure Monitor that can quickly help you figure out what's going on in your applications, irrespective of the programming language or the platform where your app is deployed. Some of these issues might be due to underlying infrastructure conditions, maybe based on your network or containers or virtual machines. Infrastructure insights from Azure Monitor, like container insights, VM insights, SQL, or network insights, can really help you track the health and availability of your environment and even correlate issues at an application level. Now, once you're done with detection and diagnostics, you will of course want to operationalize these situations. And you can do that with our alert management framework, which even has AI ops driven alerting for smart alerts. And you can even set up automated actions for remediations and auto scaling. Drill down further into your telemetry for troubleshooting, statistics, or further correlation, we have a centralized log analytics platform that can help you with deeper diagnostics. And for visualizations, Azure provides a native dashboarding capability where you can pin your metrics and charts for like a common team dashboard. Or you can create workbooks, which are interactive reports that you can share with your colleagues. Now, across these scenarios, how can Azure Monitor help you drive IT efficiency? Now, whatever resources you are using in Azure, there is a native out-of-the-box monitoring support that is consistent and complete across metrics and logs. And for relevant resources, there is easy onboarding available for curated insights out of the box, so you don't have to really depend on any third-party analytics or monitoring solutions. If your organizations have any security or compliance requirements, Azure Monitor can really help you meet those needs, even helping you onboard and manage your monitoring resources at scale. For richer and deeper diagnostics, Azure Monitor provides you a centralized log analytics platform, helping you correlate data not just between your app and infra telemetry, but including your audit logs, management logs, security logs as well. There is even a rich distributed tracing experience that can help you connect your applications and dependencies in one place. And of course, there is a fairly rich ecosystem. So whatever IT or DevOps tools and processes you're using in your organizations, stay assured that Azure Monitor can really connect with those and have you the insights where you need them to be. Now, let's drill down deeper into some of the newer capabilities we have launched in the last few months, including announcements we are making at the Build 2021 conference. Azure Monitor has a new unified agent that you can use to collect guest monitoring data from your Azure VMs and essentially replace your existing log analytics agent or telegraph agent. It even supports your Azure Sentinel and Azure Security Center solutions. And support for VM Insights and other monitoring solutions from Azure Monitor is going to come very soon. In terms of centralized data collection, we have very granular and flexible configuration available for you to collect Windows event logs, perf counters, or sys logs effortlessly at scale. You can transmit this data both to Azure Monitor metrics as well as multiple log analytics workspaces across both Linux and Windows environments. With this, let's jump onto a quick demo and see this in action.
Thanks, Rahul. For this demo, imagine you're an IT admin responsible for managing and monitoring dozens or even hundreds of VMs. You want to collect basic usage and performance information from all the VMs. However, some VMs are running a mission-critical app where you need to collect additional application and Windows event logs. You also need to keep your performance data and logs in a single data store to make it easy to correlate performance issues across the stack when troubleshooting later on. Depending on how you're doing your data collection today, it may be a complicated task to set up different data collection options for different subsets of VMs. As we begin, you may have noticed that there are no agents or extensions installed on the 4 VMs in my resource group. The new Azure Monitor agent and its associated data collection rules make this a pretty straightforward process. You can create a data collection rule with only the basic performance counters and apply it to all VMs, and create a second rule for application and Windows event logs, but apply that rule to only the relevant application server VMs. To start the process, I'll navigate to Azure Monitor and Data Collection Rules. There's already a rule in here that works with SQL Insights, but I'll be creating 2 new ones for our use case. I'll start by creating the Global IT rule. This rule will collect basic performance counters from all our Windows VMs. First, I'll specify the name, the resource group, region, and platform type. Next, I'll choose the set of VMs to collect data from. In this case, I'll select the resource group, which includes all 4 VMs. Then I'll define what data will be collected by the rule by selecting the performance counters and leaving the basic settings for CPU, memory, disk, and network data. Now let's choose where the perf data will be sent. By default, performance counters are sent to the Azure Monitor metrics time series database. But in our case, we also want them to be stored in Azure Monitor logs for longer-term retention and more sophisticated trend analysis. So I'll add a destination and choose logs. Then I'll select the workspace, and at this point, we're ready to review our rule definition and create it. Once the rule's been created, you can view the rule definition, which lists the resources and the data sources. Now we can get started on the second data collection rule to collect the app and system logs only from the application server VMs. Returning to the rules in Azure Monitor, we can see the new rule that we've just created, and we can begin creating our second rule. Again, we start with the basics here: the name, the resource group, the region, and platform. But this time, for the machines, we'll just choose the 2 application servers and not the entire resource group like we did before. And for our data source, we'll use Windows event logs, where you can use checkboxes in the UI to make your selections for the log levels and log types, or you can use the custom option to use XPath queries to filter log collection at the agent. Lastly, I'll select the same log analytics workspace as we used in the previous rule. That's it. Now I can review and create the rule. At this point, we can look at the VMs and observe that the Azure Monitor agent extension has been installed and configured. And I'll do a final quick sanity check to verify that the rule is only applied to the application server VMs. After a few minutes, we'll be able to visit the Log Analytics workspace to check on the data collection being performed from our agents and defined by our 2 new data collection rules. Once in logs, I can use sample queries to check on what data has been collected so far. First, I'll use the track VM availability sample query to see if all 4 VMs are in fact sending data. And here, as expected, we see all 4 VMs, the 2 app server VMs and the 2 database VMs sending heartbeats. But now let's look for the event logs. Recall that we've only configured Windows Event Log Collection from the application server VMs and not the DB VMs. Again, I'll use a sample query to check on this. Let's look at all events collected in the last hour. Here, we only see a couple of entries from the app VMs, but no event logs from the DB VMs, so our data collection rules look to be working as expected. Thanks. Back to you, Rahul.
Now, Azure Monitor provides you curated insights for many of your resources. Let's look at some of the areas where there have been recent updates. If you use Azure App Services to manage your applications, now you can easily onboard your Java apps to application insights without any need of adding an SDK or manual instrumentation. And you can start detecting and diagnosing issues and optimizing performance fairly quickly. If you want to file work items from application insights to your Azure DevOps or GitHub toolchain, now there is a new workbooks-driven experience that can help you connect the same. Within container monitoring, we recently announced persistent volume monitoring, where you can track your capacity, usage, and even states of persistent volume across your AKS clusters. There is also a new reports tab within Container Insights containing advanced monitoring reports around, let's say, disk capacity or deployments or even persistent volumes available with one click. We are now also supporting all of your Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes clusters with the new V2 extension model. A recent new announcement had been around SQL Insights, which is available in preview for all of your Azure SQL DB, SQL MI, or even SQL Server on Azure VMs, helping you track and manage your SQL deployments, including telemetry data like memory or statistics or replicas, file sizes, so much more. Let's look at some of this in action as well.
For this demonstration, you are part of a DevOps team that has recently been asked to deploy and manage a new Java app on Azure. Your responsibilities include monitoring the app and performing root cause analysis if any issues or user complaints arise after deployment. In our case, we'll be using the Pet Clinic sample Java app to show how to get started monitoring. The app has already been deployed and has some sample load being generated for it. Here's a look at the deployed app in action to show the current user experience. And here, I'll click around a bit just to show a few pages to ensure that the app is in fact operational. Now, back to monitoring this app. In many cases, you don't have access to the source code or the development team to manually instrument the code and implement your standard observability telemetry collection. So how would you go about getting visibility into the usage, performance, dependencies, and exceptions for this Java app? So let's start with which app metrics are automatically available out of the box without any user configuration required. Right on the app's overview page, you can see requests, response times, 500 level errors, and the amount of data in and out. All of these are platform metrics and available by default. Additionally, you can open Metric Explorer for this app by clicking on Metrics or clicking on one of the charts. Here you can create your own combination of charts based on the out-of-the-box platform metrics. In this example, I'll show charts for CPU time and response time to see how closely these two things are related for my app. Now, one of the other common questions we get around app monitoring is how do I collect and store my app logs? This can be done by enabling a diagnostic setting for your app, where you can choose which logs you want to collect and where you'd like to send them. In this case, I'll grab the app logs and HTTP logs and send them to my log analytics workspace. Out-of-the-box metrics and user configurable logs aren't new features, but they provide the basic functionality that some devs are looking for when they're getting started. Now that I've covered the basics, we can get to some additional monitoring capabilities that you can enable with Application Insights. The new Application Insights Java agent allows you to instrument Java apps running in any environment, on Windows, Linux or Kubernetes, in the cloud, or on premises. In short, it's auto-instrumentation for Java apps, and this also powers easy UI-based App Insights onboarding for Java apps running on Azure App Service. What I want to show now is just how easy it is to enable a full application performance management solution for your Java app that can add capabilities like dependence tracing, application maps, and built-in views for root cause analysis. I'll turn on App Insights for my app. In this case, the app is already deployed, but you can also enable application insights during deployment. And you can choose to create a new App Insights resource or use an existing one to store your application layer performance data. Enablement is done with default settings for collection, but if you want to define your own, you can add a JSON file to the bottom of this page for these settings. For the purposes of this demo, I'll leave this blank and just use the defaults. Note that enabling App Insights does in fact restart your site. After a couple of minutes, we should be able to use the App Insight data to start monitoring. Specifically, you can now detect, triage, and diagnose issues with our Java app using pre-built monitoring experiences and application insights. So I'll navigate over to the App Insights data and we'll start at the overview page. You can start seeing things like failed requests, server response times, and server requests. You can also view some metrics in near real time using the live metrics view, which shows the last minute of data and updates in 1-second intervals for more on-the-fly troubleshooting. Another useful view here is failures, where you identify errors and exceptions and then filter and drill down to the end-to-end transaction view, which includes a Gantt chart of dependencies and a call stack when the exception was thrown. Sometimes your app may slow down and start performing poorly without in fact having any exceptions or errors. The performance view allows you to look at app response times per operation, per dependency or role, and you can additionally filter by time range, operation name, and duration before drilling down to the same type of end-to-end view that we saw earlier. While this isn't a full demonstration of all the workflows Application Insights supports, it's worth noting just how easily we're able to get to this level of visibility without access to the application source code. That's the benefit of our new Java Auto Instrumentation feature. Back to you, Rahul.
Awesome. Let's continue. There have been a lot of updates in Azure Monitor logs, helping you better optimize your monitoring environment. Whether you manage a single workspace or multiple workspaces in your organization, there is a new workbooks-based curated insights experience called Log Analytics Workspace Insights that can help you track and manage your workspace, including any available telemetry out of the box. There is now easier sharing and collaboration available for you and your colleagues in your organizations. You can now start creating and sharing query packs of log analytics queries as packages that you can share with your colleagues. You can also start saving and discovering pre-created functions as part of your log analytics experience. In terms of data export, you could already export logs from log analytics to your storage or event hubs via CLI or REST capabilities. Now, starting build, you can separate this log export between multiple destinations, helping you really overcome that destination rate limit and kind of helping you maintain that relevant access control in your destinations. Log alerts are now stateful, just like Azure Monitor metric-based alerts. What that means is as long as the alert criteria is active, the alert would only fire once and not create so many notifications, even automatically resolving once the condition has been met. There is also a preview of a new 1-minute frequency alerting criteria. So your alert query can evaluate much faster, helping you get those alerts much faster. In the space of data encryption and governance, there are now built-in Azure policy definitions available that can help you meet your compliance and control requirements. With these policies, you can assess compliance with your CMK encryption or infrastructure encryption across your log analytics workspaces or saved queries or even log analytics alert queries that you might be creating. Let's look at some of these in action.
Thanks, Rahul. For this demonstration, you are part of a central IT monitoring team that has many log analytics workspaces deployed, and you want to understand what the sources and volumes of the incoming data are. You can use log analytics workspace insights in this type of situation. if you need to do an audit before you consolidate your workspaces into a smaller number of workspaces or down to a single workspace. Or maybe you have a single large workspace and you want to understand which teams and departments are generating the most data or consuming the most resources. Like most other insights, this one starts with an at-scale view to show all of your workspaces across multiple subscriptions. From here, you can select a single one to drill into its details. There are many typical log management questions that can be answered with this insight, starting with, where's your ingested log data coming from? What are the top tables, the top agents, the top solutions, and resources generating this log data? Going on to performance. What's the latency of the incoming logs, and where's that latency occurring? Is it in the logs ingestion pipeline, or is it the network latency between the agent and Azure Monitor before it even gets to the pipeline? Which queries are taking the longest time to complete and using the most resources? Can these queries be optimized for even better performance or run at specific times on a schedule? Workspace Insights allows you to answer all of these questions and more using a predefined workbook, where you can edit the workbook to customize or make changes to the existing queries. Let's continue with our theme of workspace management. As part of the central IT monitoring team, you're already familiar with writing custom KQL queries for analysis and diagnosis. And you've recently had some success using log analytics to investigate some suspicious behavior on key vaults. Now, how can we go about sharing the log queries that you've developed with the help desk team or the operations teams or with other colleagues so they can take advantage of them whenever they need to review what's happening with their key vaults? That's where query packs come into play. Query packs enable you to save a query once and use it throughout your Azure environment. They're effectively a container to store and share queries. They're available in log analytics, whether you access logs using the workspace directly, from a resource logs blade, or from application insights. So here we are in log analytics with our scope set to a single key vault and where query packs are already in use. First, let's look at the queries available to us. Notice that there's a new query pack selector in the top left. One of the query packs has already been selected. If I click on this, I can see what other query packs are available. Here we see the demo query pack, the one that's been selected, and two others available. Saved queries can also be labeled, so if we choose to group queries by label, we can see the standard Key Vault sample queries at the bottom of the list, but queries in our query pack are labeled to mirror organization structure, where we have Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 troubleshooting. Navigating to the filter pane, we can also see the options to select the query packs and to group by label. So you can easily use queries that others have created and shared with you right here within the query editor. Now let's say you've come up with a new query to analyze Key Vault usage in even more detail. In this case, the query retrieves the list of IPs calling the Key Vault with their request count, average, and max duration. We save this query to our existing query pack. Here, I need to input a name and description, but notice the resource type is already pre-populated with Key Vault. And I have the option to choose from the existing labels or to create a new one. At this point, we can save the query to the pack, and anyone who has access to the query pack will be able to reuse the query that we've created. Here's a look at the query packs that are available to me. Note that these are ARM objects that can be deployed at scale and managed using infrastructure as code practices. Azure Monitor logs include several features to support enterprise-scale monitoring. Workspace Insights and Query Packs are only the two most recent additions to the existing capabilities, such as dedicated clusters, customer-managed keys, data export to storage, and event hubs. Remember to check out our doc to learn more about these enterprise-ready features.
That has been awesome. Here are some of the resources that can help you keep in touch on what's happening with Azure Monitor. We regularly update all of our new capabilities and scenarios on Azure Updates. There are documentation available along with how-tos and tutorials that can really help you get started. There are some useful skills and courses available as well that can help you meet your learning or practice needs, along with some amazing customer stories, customers like you who have taken advantage of Azure Monitor and positively impacted their business. You can even get in touch with us through our Twitter handle at Azure Monitor. With that, thanks a lot for joining us and hope to see you more on this monitoring journey. Thank you.